everyone. Stephanie Locricchio and Aimee coming to you live from Community Corner, Children's Health Defense Weekly Show. We're here on a special evening tonight on Wednesday to come to you with some really timely information. As you know, Aimee and I were both at local protests on Monday, very much related to the topic that we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to bring a guest on tonight who can navigate you through all of the mandatory vaccine mandates that you're seeing in universities and walk you through some of the action steps. The goal here tonight is really to create an understanding and just a basic guideline of what you can do if you're dealing with mandates in your specific area or school. And the thing about it is many people don't know that these mandates are violating federal law. I mean, I spoke about that the other day, Aim. What was the feedback at your rally that you went to the other day?
Well, we had a great showing. There was a rally on Monday at Stony Brook, Long Island, that was actually organized by the wonderful Kate Corrigan that you and I have had on the show now twice. She's amazing, powerhouse, activist. And we had a really good showing. I would say there was about 75 people there. I was hoping for more, but it was still a good crowd. And it was a combination of parents and students. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these students are just really upset about, these mandates that are coming down on them for various reasons. Maybe it goes against their own personal faith-based beliefs. Some of these people, like Kate herself, have had long-standing religious exemptions their entire lives that all of a sudden these institutions are completely disregarding and denying. Some of them may just have objections to just the mandatory COVID. Perhaps they had the infection and they actually have antibodies, which, all of a sudden people just want to wipe out, from their memory as if natural immunity doesn't exist. So for a variety of reasons, students everywhere are rising up, to push back on this because it is, completely trampling their rights to bodily autonomy, their civil rights, their human rights, and especially with some of the measures that are happening after the fact, as students may get an exemption approved and then have more restrictive measures, which I know we'll be talking about shortly with Ray. But it was a great day, lots of speakers. We actually did a live. It is, here in the community page, you guys could watch it. Had a wonderful variety of speakers. So definitely encourage you guys to tune in for both the Stony Brook rally and Stephanie's in New Jersey if you didn't catch it on Monday.
Yes, they're both on the CHG Live page. So this was the inspiration and the reason that we're coming to you on our typically not scheduled night, because a lot of these deadlines are coming up and approaching. And in the positions that we're in as advocacy liaisons, we are in touch with parents and students on a daily basis with so many of the questions that we're going to be going over tonight. So hopefully tonight, parents and students will feel empowered with the information needed to push back against mandates. So with that, I'm going to bring on our guest. Ray Flores is a driven health freedom attorney who's currently working with CHG to bring lawsuits contesting a variety of issues. He has a degree in geography from UCLA, where he focused on environmental and philosophy, and a JD from Abraham Lincoln University School of Law in Los Angeles, California. After 30 years of working in natural foods, both in marketing and in law, he's honored to serve our movement at this critical time. And we're so honored to have you, Ray. Happy to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you again, Ray.
Yes, nice to see you as well.
So you and I speak a lot regarding all the craziness that's going on in the world. And it's been comforting to have conversations with you because I'm all about the solutions. And when you and I get on the phone, we always come up with something that we can offer. So I'm so grateful that we get to work together on this mission, and having Aimee here, it's just the completion of the puzzle. And I know from me, I've been getting a lot of phone calls with various reactions from, infuriated to terrified to caving, all up and down the circle that you can imagine. When you speak to parents and students regarding these university mandates, what are you seeing as far as reactions and the types of things that people are willing to do when it comes to standing for freedom?
Well, that's the thing. I think the parents are more willing to stand for it than a lot of the students. And I think that's been a real problem. And I don't want to say with this generation because it sounds a little stodgy, but we really need to see the younger people themselves, the students themselves, rise up and really firmly be committed to fight against these vaccine mandates. the problem with it is that nobody really knows what the long-term effects are, and the parents are wise enough to think about this. They remember thalidomide, or they remember other experiments, the Tuskegee experiment, whatever it is that they recall the injustices. They think in the long term about DNA and their legacy with their grandchildren and so on. So they're looking at it in a much bigger picture than a student who's just looking at it as far as what's most convenient to do at this moment.
Yeah, and I was at the rally at the College of New Jersey the other day, and I had a chance to address the people that were there, students and parents, even grandparents were present, which was pretty amazing. And one of the things that I've been saying to a lot of these people is this is a really challenging time, and these are difficult decisions for adults, for teenagers, for college-age students. Nobody should have to be in the position to decide between their own personal beliefs and their bodily autonomy. So when you're talking to these students and having these conversations, what kind of perspective do you put it in? Because I've been saying choose your hard. Like, you can choose to have the hard conversation now and deal with maybe not going to the university that you thought you wanted to go to or having to change. But the hard on the other side of this injection is really a whole lot of unknowns. I mean, we're seeing the VAERS numbers skyrocket. I mean, over 10,000 people, close to 11,000 now, have been reported dead. 500,000 plus people have been reported as having injuries. I mean, the numbers are staggering. What advice would you give to students that are watching, that are having a difficult time dealing with the repercussions and the consequences of having to make these challenging decisions?
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, that you're right. You're right for feeling the pressure. You're right for being torn between two choices. We're rolling the dice, really, because either the vaccine is safe enough or you won't be injured and you'll have a future, right? Or on the other hand, the vaccine is totally dangerous, and so you don't want to be a part of that future yourself anyway. So I want to give a third option, and that's the one where you stand up for yourself, where you still get your education, where you still move your life forward, and you don't necessarily, cower down to their pressure. I think a lot of their pressure is based on their personal attitude toward life. I mean, a lot of these people in power took a very careful course throughout their whole life. They may be rather timid people who are just working for an institution because they couldn't make it out there as an entrepreneur. So they figured out that this is what they would cave into, or this is what they'd be lured by, whether it's a free donut or a free hamburger, or whether or not if their education were taken away from them, would that be enough to push people over the edge? And so I say, stand up for yourself, define who you are. I say, make your own choice, choose your own path, and don't, give in to pressure to experiment on your own body.
I'm shaking my head in the background, like, vigorously. Aimee and I
Yeah,
were talking about this
absolutely. I want to add a comment to that. At the Monday Students Against Mandates rally here in New York, we had Trisha Lindsay speak. She's a civil rights attorney. Actually, she's like a triple threat. So this woman's everything. She used to be an educator, saw all the indoctrination, corruption. Then she went to the medical field. She was a registered nurse for many years. Now she's an attorney. So talk about a triple threat. She had an amazing speech that I would love every student to tune into, and every parent, if you're watching, to have your child listen to, because she talked about exactly what you're saying, Ray, that this is this generation's fight, and they need to stand up for themselves. They need to rise up. There has never been a more important time for them to define who they are and to stand up to the coercion. And she talked all about the coercion. And it's really astounding and quite scary to see how many of these students just feel like they don't have a choice, and to just be, controlled and coerced into doing this, whether it's peer pressure or they really feel like their back's up against the wall. So I want to echo your sentiment, Ray, and I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think parents need to kind of guide their own children to find their own footing in that, and encourage them to stand up for themselves as well.
What's really amazing about what you say is that, they feel like there's no option, but there's never been more options, right? I mean, there are states that won't allow this. There's schools that do not require it. And there's a million internet options.
Mm-hmm.
And so being educated, and maybe in the future it'll be defined differently than sitting at a 4-year school and getting a liberal arts degree and studying, social theories and things like that. Maybe something more practical will be the learned man or woman of the future.
It's so true. And, I think so often I found myself over the years, whether it's genetically modified, toxic chemically laden food or personal care products, talking about voting with your wallet. And it's a huge vote to invest in your education for your child or your, young adults, to send them to a school that's forcing things on them that do not fall within your belief system or do not feel right with your gut intuition. It's just counterintuitive. So I think the sad thing is, like you alluded to at the beginning, is that parents are more upset than children. So I'm getting all these phone calls of people saying, we want to do this. We want to be part of lawsuits. We want to be plaintiffs. What do we do? Who's suing? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And the reality is I don't think that they realize that once your child is 18, it's no longer about you wanting to take legal action. It's about working with your young adult to decide that they feel called to take action legally. So I want to clear up for people that are watching that may have reached out to me. Let's talk about what it looks like to be a plaintiff and why this, you talk about ripe cases and ripe plaintiffs, what it means to find the right plaintiff, what's involved for the person that's signing on as a plaintiff. What sacrifices must they be willing to make in order to get the justice that they seek?
Yes, well, that's the key question right now, is the question of what they call ripeness. Ripeness means that the case is ready for trial or ready to be adjudicated by a court. And ripeness means that the mandate has been firmly set, a deadline set, penalties set, such as being expelled from school, and also that you've exhausted all your remedies or your potential exemption remedies before the suit is brought. And what makes it even worse is that by the time the school judges and determines whether or not you qualify for an exemption, can take even more time. So a lot of things are up in limbo, and cases have been brought that have not been ripe because the plaintiff really wasn't being forced to do anything. They just complained to the court that they were, when the case itself has not, was not ripe. So that's the key issue.
So when you're talking about the right cases and ripe cases, obviously finding the right plaintiff, finding the right case is super important. But I think people need to understand that lawyers who are filing cases that they know that they cannot win, or picking plaintiffs that aren't fully committed to the process, does more harm than good. Can you talk a little bit about the consequences of lawsuits being brought that don't go our way?
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that they brought a case that they knew they couldn't win. I haven't seen that yet. I've seen nothing but cases where everybody was sure they were going to win, and some were good and some were not so good. I want to talk about the Indiana case, for example. That was just decided on Sunday, or not, and the news says that they decided the case and they upheld the university mandate. Well, that's just not true. What they did was they denied a preliminary injunction that was brought by the plaintiff. So that is a huge difference between upholding a mandate and determining whether or not it can be held while the case is tried. And fortunately, in Indiana, Attorney Jim Bopp seems like he's really, really good, and he's already moving forward. He's already filed a motion for injunction pending appeal with the district court, and he's also filed the original papers with the appellate court. And remember, this is only about 3 days old, so he's moving forward, and he's moving forward fast. And I believe that he's going to challenge Jacobson. The other thing that's really critical in all of these emergency use authorization cases is whether or not there's coercion, because they're not allowed to be coerced under Nuremberg. They're not allowed to be coerced under the Emergency Use Authorization Act. And the judge in both the Texas hospital case, the Methodist hospital, and in Indiana University, both times the judges said that it's not coercion. It's not coercion to tell them they need a vaccine. If they don't want it, then they can go work somewhere else. Or if they don't want the vaccine, then they can go to another school. So to me, it is coercion. And so the good news is that it's obviously coercion. And so once they get up to the appellate court and once they get up to the Supreme Court, then eventually we're going to have really great law that's going to say that emergency use authorized vaccines, PCR, and masks cannot be mandatory.
Now, thank you for clarifying the way the news has been representing the Indiana University case, because it's part of what happens to us every day, right? The misrepresentation, the misinformation, the fake news, essentially. And there's a huge difference from denying a TRO to just upholding a mandate. So I'm glad you clarified that for our audience. And I think another huge, huge area that we always hear misrepresented is the Jacobson case, which you mentioned. That is constantly twisted, and people don't understand the history of that case and what it means for health freedom. So just because you mentioned it, do you mind maybe talking a little bit about that? Because if Bop's case does go to SCOTUS, likely that's going to come up. And what precedent do you think it would set in this instance? And if you could just do a quick nutshell representation of that case, because I think that one constantly gets twisted by the media.
Well, I mean, Jacobson is a 116-year-old case, and it's been used to justify either get a vaccine or pay $5. And then from there, it's been used to justify sterilization, mandatory vaccines that had nothing to do with fines, that had nothing to do with outbreaks. So the law has been continuously cited up until Roman Catholic Diocese started to erode Jacobson. And so we believe that the time is right for Jacobson to be overturned and for the correct application of it. It's not this towering authority, according to Justice Gorsuch, that everybody relies on. It's not a rubber stamp for tyranny, right? And that's what it's been used for. And it's in every case, from a lockdown, all the way through mandatory masks, mandatory vaccines. It keeps getting pulled out of the box, and it keeps expanding its influence. And it was really not meant to be such an important case that it's become today.
Right. I think the biggest misrepresentation I hear is people think that it then should allow for forced vaccines, physically forcing people to take them, as opposed to a penalty, which is what Jacobson had to do, right? Which is paying the fine.
Yeah, $5.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is helpful information for parents and families trying to understand what to do. I'd like to reiterate your guidance of exhaust all your avenues first, right? Which is, so based on the state you're in, the college, university there, knowing whether you have the rights to religious exemption or medical exemption, trying to exhaust those paths. But what would you now give as guidance for the families that maybe they do get their religious exemption approved by the university or college, but now they're getting the onslaught of all the restrictions? Your child cannot dorm here on campus. Your child cannot participate in sports. They cannot be, part of any student body activities, or all these other egregious discriminatory restrictions that are being put upon them. What would your advice be if that should happen to a child?
Well, it is a case to fight the university for being segregated for your religious belief. And it is a case that can be brought. There's also another case where you could say that somebody's already had COVID and therefore they don't need the vaccine. So there are other peripheral arguments that can be made in addition to the EUA, or emergency use authorization argument. The thing is that at this time, EUA law is the correct law to go after and to fight these mandates with. However, secondary to that is going to be whether or not it's a violation of the First Amendment. And little by little, people are starting to make these arguments as well. And they're going to start coming out more and more as more lawsuits around the country start challenging these mandates. I'm aware of about at least 4 or 5 that are in the pipeline.
Okay, great. So I think part of that is, allowing these parents to understand what's the best attorney to hire, right? So now we're talking about it could possibly be, discrimination on someone's religious beliefs and, going after that. Is it a civil rights violation? Is it, a violation of federal law because it's EUA? We're talking about all possible different legal avenues. So as families are out there struggling to navigate this, what type of attorney they're looking for? Are they looking for a constitutional attorney? They're looking for a civil rights attorney? Could you give any guidance on how each family within their state can find the right attorney to fight this battle for their family?
Well, I'm in California. I practice law in California, and I'm admitted pro hoc vice in other states. But as far as anything goes for California itself, I would ask any attorney or any family to find an attorney first, and then contact us at CHD and ask us for our library, our arguments, ask us for what case law can be raised, what causes of action can be raised, what arguments work, which ones don't. And as an attorney, it's always important to run ideas by other lawyers. And we're available. I'm available as a resource. Mary Holland and all our other great lawyers that we have in our network are available to run these ideas by. And the other thing, too, is that it's not a competitive field in that we're all trying to help each other. So we're not really looking to steal your case. We're just looking to help you out. So first of all, find a local lawyer, any local lawyer, first of all. Second of all, try and find somebody who cares about constitutional issues. Try and find somebody who supports your position, because a lot of lawyers and unfortunately lots of judges think that anybody who doesn't get vaccinated is crazy. And to me, that's a horrible place. I mean, even the judge in Texas said, not only are these unvaccinated employees a danger to other people, they're a danger to themselves. Now, that to me is a remarkable statement. So you have to find an attorney, I think, who's a true believer, somebody who will care, somebody who has some experience in constitutional law. And then from there, once you found somebody who will take your case, because there's a matter of them getting paid as well. And a lot of parents just think that somebody's going to come to their rescue for free. And sometimes it happens that way, but other times it doesn't. And some of these lawyers are quite expensive. So what you need to do is make sure you have some type of arrangement with them where they can either, try and get crowdfunding or try and, get a low bono, which is like not pro bono, meaning free, but low bono, meaning a reduced rate. And the other problem, too, is that a lot of these lawsuits don't have any punitive or compensatory damages. You're just really suing for declaratory relief. All you're really looking for is for them to stop the practice, and there's no real monetary award at the end of the game. So finding the right lawyers critical. If anybody out there has a case that's ripe, that's ready, they've already exhausted all their options with respect to a medical exemption or a religious exemption, then please give us a call, give me a call particularly after you found an attorney in your area, and have that attorney call me, and then I can go over some of the details and some of the difficulties that they can expect, and what some of the cause of action and what the game plan, what the battle plan would be.
Okay, great. And in most cases, are you seeing these cases be represented as a class action, or is it sometimes just a group of families getting together within a specific college or university as the plaintiff, and they're kind of pitching in to afford to pay for the attorney fees? How is it usually structured, and does it matter one way or the other?
Well, I haven't seen any class action suits. Everyone has been a named plaintiff. And that's another problem, too, is that the student doesn't want to be labeled. They don't want to be singled out. They don't want to be, ostracized. They don't want to have their name on a case like Roe v. Wade, even though that's not her real name, for the rest of history. But history rewards the bold. So it's a matter of standing up for what you believe in. And you know, it would get structured where either the families put together the money, they find a lawyer who'd be willing to help. CHD can help with finding experts, finding expert declarations. A lot of lawsuits right now are being done remotely, so you don't have the same type of problems where you have to fly the expert out for a deposition. So now that we're in a more virtual world, it's much less expensive to bring a lawsuit than it was even a year ago.
So
Great.
one of the things that we talked about a couple of times, because you and I have had many conversations about potential plaintiffs that are calling in. It's not that CHD doesn't want to take on more. It's that we need something called lead attorney. So can you just hone in on, when people are talking to attorneys, exactly what being a lead attorney means so that they can communicate it to whoever they're speaking to?
Well, sure. Being the lead attorney means you're the one who's responsible for the case. It's more than just co-signing for a loan. You have to actually bring the case. You have to be available to the judge. You have to have an address where you can be reached in the district sometimes in order to bring in a lawyer from outside the state to help you. A lot of these cases are almost becoming cookie cutter cases to where every pleading is becoming remarkably similar. So there's enough templates out there for even a lawyer who doesn't have a huge amount of experience in this area to be able to bring the suit. So if they contacted us, then we'd be more than happy to give them the templates and the strategies that they need in order to be successful.
So you mentioned, Ray, you know, the impact that the judge has on these cases, obviously, in terms of their views on, you know, the right to decline vaccines. I mean, where do you see, if you had to, you know, look through your crystal ball in terms of where we are right now in our world and what's happening, and the fact that, you know, this EUA status, which is right now our best legal argument, that window also may be closing. You know, everyone is kind of predicting that eventually there may be full FDA licensing and approval. So if you had to look through your crystal ball, like, how do you see this ending in the courts, and where do you see that avenue for a legal win to end this madness?
Well, I mean, there's no other vision that I have other than us laughing uproariously at how stupid this whole exercise was and how badly we beat them and how humiliated they are for all the lies that they've spread and all the abuse that they've taken of our people. So that's the future, in my opinion. I think that it's important to put things also in historical perspective. For those of you who haven't seen the movie on Netflix called The Trial of the Chicago 7, I highly recommend watching that. And I've read the transcripts from the Chicago 7 trial. I've seen Tom Hayden speak live before. I think these people were really brilliant, and I think that judge really stepped over the line. But if you want to get an idea of just how far a judge can go to sabotage a case, that movie will definitely prove that to you. And I've seen many injustices with juveniles, felons, and also the wrong calls. I've seen innocent people go to prison. I've seen people wrongly liable in civil actions. I've seen lives ruined. And a trial is a major ordeal. I mean, it is a war. And because I was involved in a couple of them that were just gut-wrenching. That's why I decided to go to law school at 40 years old. So you know, in comparison to, you know, Vietnam and that whole era and the choices and the unrest that people experienced over 50 years ago, this is bad, but it's not as bad as having to go to Vietnam and seeing your friends die and having no choice, although this could be worse on the other hand if your DNA is just sabotaged forever. So it's really a matter of making your own choice for yourself, to really look inside yourself to make a decision, not only logically, but also intuitively to decide what it is that's going to be right for you, because most lawyers have crystal balls on their desk because every client wants the attorney to look in the crystal ball. And what I see is 4 more years or 6 more years even of tough living. And I see a wind blowing, but I don't know from which direction it's coming. All I can tell anybody is to make sure that when the wind blows from whatever direction it comes, that you stay standing strong.
I love that.
I love that ending. Thank you so much, Ray. That was excellent. I mean, what amazing guidance and words and wisdom to give everyone. And I think really to give, young college students hope and, to build them up that this is their time to stand up, to not be bullied, to not be coerced by these institutions, and to not do something they regret. And I love your message about intuition, because so many times people just ignore that, that little voice that just says, this doesn't make sense, or this isn't right. And people need to tune into that. It's so important. So yes, thank you.
And if I could just finish up on one more thing, just even after the licensure is granted, that doesn't mean that it's the end of our lawsuits, because they're still going to be experimental, because the clinical trials haven't ended. And they're not going to end until next year or the year after that. So all is not lost if EUA is granted. There are still avenues, and that's why it's important for any attorney who's planning a lawsuit such as this to give us a call.
Right. We know that they're not going to meet the qualifications that are typically set forth to be, deemed a vaccine. So there's an entire other legal avenue there that will be pursued at that point. So yeah, this is not a fight to give up. This is not a fight to back down from. And I love your message about staying strong and standing tall in the wind. So Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show again. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Stephanie and I love speaking with you. And this was excellent guidance to give our audience tonight.
Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll talk soon. I love him because he brings like this Zen feeling to such a stressful subject matter. Anytime I have a conversation with him, I leave the conversation feeling encouraged. And I want to read this one thing because he sent me something before we went live after we had the pre-show talk. Our mission is to spread the follow your heart message throughout the world. The more we put the message out there, the better the world will be. It's from the co-founder of Follow Your Heart, which actually creates like some healthy organic products that he was involved with. So it was just so great to see, because you think of lawyers sometimes as just being one-dimensional. And I really enjoyed the fact that he brought so much, almost like parental guidance to the conversation. So hopefully people out there, you got something to take away. And the most important thing that Aimee and I always stress is you do have choice. It's our dollars that we're spending. We get to choose where we want to put them. So if you are unhappy with the situation that you're finding yourself in at your current school or university, we're going to have a lot more information to come regarding homeschooling options, things that you can do to really send a message to your school district, send a message to your university to make sure that we start the school year off the right way. Because last year, we made a lot of mistakes, and we have to take ownership and accountability of the mistakes that we made and know that going into September, there will be no masks, there will be no mandates, there will be no segregation, there will be no discrimination. And as parents, we have to stand for that. So
Right. I actually just talked about that last night. We had a meeting here in New York. We had a fabulous meeting where we had Dr. Larry Pilevsky do a lecture first, and we had an amazing roundtable. We had a couple of attorneys. We had Jim Mermigas and Kevin Barry speak, and we had some, medical freedom warrior activists. We had Rita Palma, who's been on our show, and John Gilmore, and we had Kate Corrigan, and we had a whole panel discussion. And from the audience, we took questions, and that was one of the questions from the audience was a mom who was just felt beside herself. And she told the story, it brought tears to my eyes, where she said, I think it was her 10-year-old said to her in the beginning of the school year, but Mom, you're not in charge of me. The government is calling the shots. And it just it struck my heart. It was just an awful thing to hear. And so she went on with her question to the panel, which was, what do we do? Like, what do we do if this is what next fall looks like, with the masks and the segregation and maybe testing? And, you know, she was in tears, and you can just hear the pain and the anguish in parents' voice. And so I just said to her, look, just know you have choices. There are co-ops forming all over every state, all over the country. There's alternative schooling. Homeschooling does not look like your child home alone and isolated. That's not what homeschooling looks like these days. And there's more to come on that, and will help, because it's just sad when these parents really feel like they have no other avenue and they have no other choice when they really do. And to your point, we have to vote with our dollars. You know, don't put your child in a situation. Obviously, she knows it's wrong. She knows it's not the best thing for a child, you know, for their health, for their, you know, physical health or emotional health, their overall wellness. So just don't do it.
Right.
So Stephanie and we're going to have that show coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to have on a couple of experts, people who have homeschooled their entire families, you know, from kindergarten up through high school. We even have some people who have college level experience. And we're going to bring you the tools, the resources, the information, the firsthand stories. So, you know, our audience has a sense of, what does that really look like? How do I actually do it? What does that mean? And what are the requirements? Because it does vary state to state. So be tuned for that coming up in the next few weeks from us.
And just as a note, we will not be here on Monday of this week coming. Aimee is moving and I will be on vacation. So we'll be back to you the first week of August, and we will have a new showtime that we will be announcing soon. So stay tuned for those details as well. You'll get all the information coming up on my social media, CHD social media, as well as Aimee. In the meanwhile, we want to leave you with the same information that we bring up every week, because repetition and practice make perfect. So we want to make sure that people know where to go on the website, because there are so many resources available to you right now, available that you can take and use and share. Sharing is caring at this point. So if you have people that are confused, please point them in the direction of information. So we're going to screen share and go through our vaccine mandates toolkit, the letters that you need, the resources, the links, all the things that we get the inboxes for, they are right here on the CHD website. So let me share, and Aimee is going to take you through everywhere that you can find it. Hold on one second.
Yeah, so we have developed a mandates toolkit that as soon as you come to the Children's Health Defense page, if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see it right there, Fighting COVID Mandates. And this is actually kind of a living, breathing space. We've been adding documents and resources and tools to it. But if you click through that, you'll see there's a huge number of links. We have a short form letter and a long form letter that can be used. And I just want to kind of back up to some of the guidance that we just heard from Ray tonight in terms of, you know, exhausting your resources first. So before it gets to the point of suing, know your state laws, know your rights to a medical exemption or a religious exemption. And then you have to research the path you're going to take, because it's a very different path for both. So some of these links and tools, these are not meant to be carbon copied in any way and just thrown out to your university. You will get denied that way. So you have to really dig in to learn the process, learn what's needed. And, you know, obviously, if you're getting a medical exemption, you're going to have a healthcare provider to write that for you and explain from a medical perspective why it's a contraindication for you. That in and of itself can bear challenging sometimes in terms of finding the right practitioner. If it's a religious exemption route, you really have to write a very genuine and personal letter. You have to really dig deep to understand your own true faith-based, sincere religious beliefs of why you object to taking this. And then what you can do, and what we're hearing, and we talked about this on our event last night here in New York, what you can do is write your own personal religious exemption letter, but then attach to it a letter written from an attorney. And the attorney letter will really speak to what Ray said just earlier in our show, the fact that it is in violation for any institution to mandate an EUA product. So those two arguments are best served separately. The personal exemption, religious exemption letter should come from you as your person completely steeped in your religious beliefs, and leave out any of the kind of philosophical or medical objection language, and then have your attorney represent the legal angle and why that institution is doing something wrong and violating federal law. So you can take some time and really dig in on this page. There's just a plethora of information. We have a PDF called the Toolkit that kind of walks you through all the information, all the legal history, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today and why vaccine mandates, are illegal. And there's a lot of other, links and facts in terms of things that have been happening out there, the VAERS data, the injury that's been happening, information and data on vaccine safety. It's just a ton of information and resources here. So take time to dig in and read through that when you can. Some additional information for those of you, if you're not signed up to the Defender, make sure you're signed up on that. If you just go right in our homepage, just below Bobby, you can click free sign up, plug in your email, and you'll be getting content right to your news box. We have fantastic content in the Defender, some really amazing articles on everything that you're not going to hear and see and learn in mainstream media. We have never been under a time where there's more censorship, suppression of information, and misinformation out there. Our reporting is going to bring you the truth and things that you're not hearing elsewhere. So it's really important to sign up for that. Also on our homepage under the logo, we have our Take Action button. This is our advocacy portal. So anytime there's big campaign efforts or call to actions, action alerts, bills that are hot and moving where we need legislation, advocacy effort, you click that and it'll tell you exactly what to do. There may be letters there, numbers, and people to call. So that's an important one to check in on. And of course, our show here is on CHD Live. As Stephanie mentioned, we will not be on live next week. We're coming back the first week of August, and we will have a new time of the week and day of the week. So look out for that news soon. And lastly is our community page. So if you're on the homepage and you scroll down to Defender and then scroll all the way down, you'll get to the community page. And again, this is where all our grassroots activity, local news resources, information, and campaigns are. So we want to hear from you guys. If there's something happening in your neck of the woods, if you have hot bills coming up, we just shared the latest what's happening in Massachusetts. Look out for that article. They had their hearing on Monday for 2 bills that are happening there. One to repeal their religious exemption. The second bill that would restrict medical exemptions to a very narrow list, and also to allow minors of any age to get vaccinated without parental knowledge or consent. So they had well over 500 advocates, medical freedom, parents, healthcare providers, doctors, expert testimony, and religious leaders all testify online this past Monday. So we have an article and a recap on that. Be sure to look out for that. And help support the state of Massachusetts. If you live in that state, take a look at the action items detailed in that article. Stay tuned for next steps to fight those bills in that state. And anywhere around the country, get in touch with us. Get in touch with Stephanie and I. Our role as advocacy liaisons is to help everything that all of our grassroots groups and warriors out there are doing. We want to amplify your voice and help get the information out there. So if there's anything that you want us to cover, reach out to us. We're at advocacy@childrenshealthdefense.org. Shoot us an email. Let us know if you have rallies coming up, if you have events coming up. We'll put them on our calendar. If there's big bills you want us to write about or any news, we'll feature it, get articles out there, and have you on our show. And keep us posted.
Yeah, so I'm just posting in the comments as well. There are a couple of links that Ray shared prior to the show. So if you look in the comments, you're going to find 2 different links, both on Children's Health Defense. Take a look, go on the pages, do your own research, make sure that you have all the tools that you need. Aimee just pointed out a plethora. So don't say that there's not stuff out there, because there absolutely is. You just have to spend the time to look. And know that these conversations that we're having are difficult. The times that we're living in are very hard. In order to get somewhere that you've never been, you have to be willing to do something that you've never done. You have to be willing to get uncomfortable, to stand out in the crowd, to feel vulnerable, to feel exposed, and to know that in those moments you are making human connection. And human connection right now is what's going to turn the tide on the direction that we're heading. Because at the end of the day, whether you choose to take every vaccine on the schedule or you don't want to get one for your child or for yourself, we all want the same thing for our families. We want happy, healthy, and free children, and we can all unite around that common ground. So keep that in mind as you're having your conversations. Do not be attached to a specific outcome. Be committed to having the difficult conversations and planting the seeds. It has never been a more important time to be a defender of truth, to be a defender of children's health, and to be a defender of freedom. So recognize that in order to do these things, you must be the change that you wish to see in the world. So continue to do all the things that you're doing right now and know that you are making a difference. Aimee and I are right here alongside of you, rooting all of you on, wanting to partner and support you in any way that we can. So feel free to reach out to us at the email address below, to go on and look at all the resources that are there. And if you have questions, know that you have support and that you are never alone. So while we won't be here next week, we'll be sending our love, our light, and our energy to all of you, and we'll be back at a new time on a new day. So stay tuned for those details, and we'll be coming to you with valuable information that will help you and your family during this very challenging time. So thank you so much, Aim. Great show as always. I'm so happy to have Ray back on, and we'll be back soon. Yep. Next time we're together, you'll be in Florida.
Yes, I will. I'll be broadcasting from sunny Florida instead of New York. So,
I'll be a little bit
thank you everyone who joined tonight. And if you know a college student who's dealing with this right now, please share our show tonight with them. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you then. Take care, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.